My name is Maya Ellison, and up until a few months ago, I thought I understood how the corporate world worked. I thought that if you worked hard, kept your head down, and delivered results, you'd be recognized. Maybe not right away, but eventually. I believed in merit, in integrity, in the promise that effort would be rewarded. But that was before my boss, Trevor Langston, used me as a human shield to save himself from the fallout of a disaster he caused. I wasn't just fired. I was sacrificed. And if you think I walked away quietly, you're dead wrong. I'm 33 years old, born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I grew up on the East Side, daughter of a mechanic and a high school English teacher. My parents worked like mules to keep me and my younger brother fed, housed, and in school. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, Wayne State University, class of 2014, magna cum laude, with a degree in marketing and data analytics. I didn't get handed internships through family connections or drink wine with recruiters at alumni mixers. I waited tables through school, freelance design work for local businesses, and clawed my way into my first corporate job at Sterling & Chase, a mid-sized marketing consultancy firm downtown. 10 years later, I'd become their most trusted client account manager, the kind of person who didn't just keep clients happy, I made them money. Big money. Which is why, when I was abruptly fired last December, right before the holidays, I knew something was off. Let me paint the picture for you. I was leading a project for our largest client, Voltaire Auto Group, a luxury electric car manufacturer based out of California that had recently expanded into Detroit. We were in the final stages of launching their Midwestern rebrand, complete with ad campaigns, influencer partnerships, showroom redesigns, the whole 9 yards. I'd been working on this for nearly a year. Long nights, weekend calls, 3 a.m. pitch decks, I bled for this campaign. Voltaire's VP of Marketing, Jacqueline Vaughn, trusted me more than some of her own people. The project was going so well that whispers of a promotion had started, Director of Strategy, with a corner office and a 6-figure salary. I didn't let myself believe it at first. You know how women, especially Black women in corporate, learn not to get too hopeful. But it felt real. Then Trevor screwed everything up. Trevor Langston, my boss and the senior vice president of accounts, was the kind of man who wore fake charm like a badge. Harvard MBA, tan loafers in winter, always talking about his vineyard in Napa like it made him more refined. He liked being seen as a visionary, but in reality, Trevor hated doing actual work. He was all about optics and shortcuts. And when he realized Voltaire's upcoming campaign had a critical error, an error he made while signing off on a batch of ad materials without consulting legal, he panicked. The ads had gone out to regional markets featuring an endorsement claim that wasn't approved by compliance. It was a small line, buried in fine print, but it was enough to trigger a potential FTC violation. Millions in fines. Public backlash. A complete disaster if it wasn't handled quickly and discreetly. Instead of owning it, Trevor pointed the finger at me. I didn't find out until the morning I was called into HR. I was finishing up my weekly status report when I got a Slack message from Laura from HR. Hey Maya, can you stop by conference room B? Shouldn't take more than a few minutes. I didn't think much of it. Maybe something about PTO approvals or benefit renewals. I walked in with my laptop, smiling, and walked out unemployed. No warning. No performance review. Just a cold statement from Laura and a smirking Trevor seated beside her. Maya, it's come to our attention that a serious compliance breach occurred under your supervision, Laura said, eyes glued to the script in front of her. After internal review, we've concluded that your oversight led to the release of non-compliant content for the Voltaire campaign, which has placed both the client and Sterling & Chase at considerable legal risk. I froze. I actually laughed. I thought it was a joke. But Trevor leaned forward, put on that fake concerned face, and said, I know this is difficult, Maya. But unfortunately, the buck stops with you. I wanted to scream. My fingers gripped the edge of the chair so tightly I thought I might snap the wood. I had receipts, emails, Slack threads, calendar invites that showed he approved everything. That he insisted legal wasn't necessary for this round because it would slow us down. But I wasn't given a chance to explain. My badge was deactivated before I even left the room. My company email was locked. Just like that, 10 years gone. At first, I spiraled. I cried in my car in the parking garage for an hour. I called my mom, who wanted to drive straight to the office and raise hell. I told her not to. I couldn't even explain it to my brother, who kept asking, "But can't you sue them or something?" I didn't know yet. I was in shock. But as the days passed, and the humiliation wore off, a fire started to burn in me. Because something inside me knew this wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. Trevor hadn't just fired me. He'd framed me. And that, I could work with. Here's the thing about being the quiet one in the office. People think you're harmless. They forget how closely you observe. How carefully you file things away. They forget you know the back doors, the admin passwords, the folder names no one else remembers. I hadn't left empty-handed. In fact, Trevor's mistake? He forgot I had access to the internal Q4 audit logs and the project server backup he never wiped clean. It turns out, I didn't need to burn the building down to get revenge. I just needed to hand the match to the right person, and let Trevor light it himself. The day after I was fired, I couldn't even get out of bed. I laid there in the silence of my apartment in Midtown Detroit, the blinds half closed, the scent of coffee still lingering from the machine I forgot to turn off. I felt like my body had been hollowed out, like I'd been unplugged from a system I helped build. But sometime around noon, as I stared at my ceiling fan spinning in lazy circles, something inside me snapped. Not in grief, no, in clarity. Trevor Langston didn't just ruin my career, he violated every principle I had built my life around. He blamed me to protect his image. And worse, he thought I'd just disappear. Fold quietly. He didn't realize who he was dealing with. I dragged myself out of bed, pulled out the backup hard drive I kept in my fireproof lockbox, something I'd always used to store work drafts, client branding materials, and old project assets. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was the inner East Side girl in me who'd been told too many times not to trust corporate promises. Whatever the reason, I had copies. Not of everything, but enough. Especially from the Voltaire account. Enough to trace back email approvals, version control timestamps, project approvals, and worst of all, for Trevor, his Slack message history. The first document I pulled up was an internal memo from 3 weeks before the ad launch. It had been a Friday afternoon, and Trevor had pinged me via Slack saying, "Let's push the creatives live today. Legal can circle back if needed. I've seen enough. We'll clean it up next sprint if they cry about it." I remember feeling uncomfortable at the time, like I was walking a tightrope over lava, but he was my boss. He had final say. And now he was using that same decision to fire me. I exported the chat logs. Created folders. Started building timelines. I color-coded everything, labeling each folder, approval chain, compliance flags ignored, legal bypass instances, and fallout risk. Within 72 hours, I had built a digital fortress of evidence. By the time I finished, I didn't feel helpless anymore. I felt dangerous. But I knew I couldn't act alone. Sterling and Chase was a well-oiled machine of boardroom politics and non-disclosure agreements. If I wanted to bring Trevor down, I needed leverage and allies. So I reached out to the only people who might still talk to me, the ones who'd whispered doubts over coffee breaks, rolled their eyes during Trevor's motivational Monday meetings, or sent me nervous glances whenever something shady was pushed through without sign-off. My first call was to Layla Singh, our former lead graphic designer and a close friend I trusted. She had left 6 months earlier for an agency in Chicago after growing tired of Trevor micromanaging every design decision. We hadn't talked much since, but when I told her I needed her help, her insight into the campaign files and any saved Slack receipts she might still have, she didn't hesitate. "Maya, I always knew he was dirty," Layla said on the phone. "That man made me redo the same layout 3 times just because he didn't like the font name. Not the font itself. The name. You're telling me he pinned the FTC mistake on you? Girl, I'm in. Layla had screenshots. More importantly, she still had access to an archived Dropbox that included the original campaign proofs. We cross-referenced her timestamps with my server backups. What emerged was undeniable. Trevor had knowingly skipped legal protocol, then pushed the documents live under my credentials using his admin override. It wasn't a theory, it was digital fact. Next, I reached out to Darren Knox, an analytics guy who had always struck me as awkward but decent. Darren was the type who rarely looked up from his spreadsheets but knew everything going on beneath the surface. When I messaged him on LinkedIn with a simple, "Do you know why I was really fired?" he responded within the hour with a phone number and a time. We spoke late that night. Darren told me how, after I was let go, there were whispers that something was off. Jacqueline from Voltaire had apparently been livid after the firing, because no one had told her in advance, and because it disrupted her campaign calendar. Trevor had told the board I had gone rogue with the ads. But Jacqueline didn't buy it. According to Darren, she had started asking around. I knew then that Jacqueline might be my pressure point, the person whose voice the board couldn't ignore. But I had to play it carefully. If I went in guns blazing, I'd look vindictive. I needed to be calm. Strategic. So I wrote a letter. Not an angry email, not a rant, but a measured, professional letter addressed to Jacqueline Vaughn, outlining the timeline of events, attaching copies of key approvals, and respectfully requesting a meeting to discuss concerns about the integrity of the project execution. I didn't say I was framed. I let the evidence speak for itself. I also included one piece that I knew would catch her attention, a signed internal memo showing that Trevor had authorized bypassing legal review on a previous campaign, one that Jacqueline herself had flagged last spring. It was proof this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. While waiting to hear back from Jacqueline, I continued to work quietly, pulling together a dossier so airtight it could survive a hurricane. Every file was backed up 3 times, on a hard drive, in encrypted cloud storage, and hidden on a USB drive I tucked into a false bottom coffee mug on my bookshelf. Yeah, I went full spy mode. When someone tries to kill your career, you learn to play defense like your life depends on it. Then, the call came. Jacqueline's assistant emailed me, "Ms. Vaughn has reviewed your correspondence and would like to set up a video meeting. Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, confidential." My hands shook as I replied with confirmation. I had worked years to build that woman's trust, now I needed to use it to expose the man who tried to destroy me. I knew I had one shot. If Jacqueline believed me, she could take this all the way up the board ladder. If she didn't, I'd burn every bridge I had left trying. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Trevor had made the mistake of thinking I was just another cog in the machine. But I was the one who kept that machine running. And now? I was going to dismantle it, one bolt at a time. The morning of the meeting with Jacqueline Vaughn felt like I was preparing for a courtroom battle rather than a video call. I dressed in a sharp navy blouse, hair pinned in a tight bun, makeup minimal but strong. I needed to look composed. Not vengeful. Not desperate. But confident, credible, like someone you regret underestimating. I sat at my kitchen island in my apartment overlooking Brush Park, laptop camera angled just right, light soft but direct. I checked the clock a dozen times. 2:54 p.m. 2:57 p.m. 3 p.m. sharp, her assistant admitted me into the Zoom room. Jacqueline appeared a moment later, flawless as always, dressed in a cream silk blouse and pearl earrings that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She didn't smile. She didn't waste time with pleasantries either. "Ms. Ellison. Let's get straight to it." I nodded, heart pounding behind a calm facade. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Vaughn. I appreciate your time. I know your schedules, I read your letter." I read the documents. "I didn't call this meeting for small talk," she cut in. Her tone wasn't cruel, just efficient. "What you've sent me suggests that your termination was not only unethical, but potentially unlawful. I want to hear it from your mouth. Walk me through exactly what happened, start to finish. So I did. I laid it all out, how Trevor had pushed to launch the Voltaire campaign prematurely, how he had overridden legal compliance protocols using his administrative privileges, how he had delivered final approvals under my name, then blamed me when the FTC issued the penalty. I showed her Slack screenshots, internal timestamps, approval logs, Layla's annotated design proofs, Darren's analytics summaries showing who logged edits and when. I even showed her the memo Trevor had signed off on from a previous case where legal had been bypassed, making it clear this was not a one-time mistake, but a pattern. I was careful with my tone, never emotional, never bitter. Just factual. Unshakable. Like a lawyer delivering opening arguments to a jury of one. Jacqueline leaned back in her chair, arms folded, staring off-screen for a moment. The silence dragged. I always had my doubts about Mr. Langston's methods, she finally said. But I didn't realize he was this sloppy. Or this arrogant. She locked eyes with me through the screen. Let me be blunt, Maya. If this goes public, Voltaire's board will want to know why we continued working with Sterling and Chase despite clear signs of noncompliance. I have to be surgical about this. I understand, I said, voice steady. But I didn't come here to cause chaos. I came here because the truth matters, and because my reputation shouldn't be a casualty of someone else's cover-up. Jacqueline nodded once, sharply. You're not wrong. She then surprised me by asking, have you gone to the press? No, I answered immediately. I'm not interested in scandal. I want justice. Quietly, cleanly, if possible. Smart, she said. Loud revenge feels good, but clean revenge gets results. There was something dangerous in her smile then, like she'd been in my shoes before. Like she knew exactly what it meant to be betrayed by a man protected by boardroom politics. For the first time, I saw not just a client, but a potential ally. Jacqueline leaned forward. I'll take this to our legal department. I'll initiate a formal inquiry into Sterling and Chase's conduct, using the Voltaire contract clauses. It'll be framed as a compliance audit. Quiet. Internal. But I'll make sure your name is cleared in every single report. You'll get full exoneration on record. Thank you, I breathed, feeling the beginning of something shift inside me. But, she added, if this evidence is as bad as it looks, Langston's position is more than just compromised. It's flammable. You sure you're ready to watch it burn? I didn't hesitate. He lit the match himself. When the call ended, I sat back in my chair, heart finally settling. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like power returning to my limbs. Jacqueline Vaughn wasn't just believing me, she was stepping in. And her influence wasn't just internal. She sat on multiple advisory boards, had connections in PR, and was close with two major C-level executives at Sterling's parent company. If Trevor thought he'd insulated himself with titles and tenure, he clearly forgot that no title could protect him once the clients turned. Especially a client like Jacqueline, who had the quiet ear of people who mattered more than Trevor ever would. By the next Monday, I started seeing the ripples. Darren messaged me via Signal, the encrypted app we switched to after agreeing Slack wasn't safe. He's pacing in his office like a lunatic, Darren wrote. Someone from corporate legal showed up today. Jacqueline must have fired the first cannon. Another update came 2 days later, compliance team asking for retroactive access logs. Langston looks gray. Then Layla called me on Thursday, girl. One of my contacts still at the firm said HR has scheduled a review of leadership conduct. That's usually code for we're building a case before termination. It was happening. Quietly. Surgically. Just like Jacqueline promised. I wasn't smug. I wasn't cheering. This wasn't about watching Trevor suffer. This was about justice. About accountability. About reminding people like him that the people you step on are often the ones who know how the whole machine works. I built his campaigns. I designed the metrics. I wrote the briefs and gave him credit without question. He built his career on my labor, then discarded me like a used towel the moment it got messy. But I wasn't disposable. I was the architect of the very tower he was now watching crumble beneath him. And just as the walls began to close in on Trevor Langston, I was already building the next stage of my plan, one that would not only restore my name but reshape the entire conversation around how Sterling and Chase treated the very people who made them successful. I wasn't just coming back. I was coming for everything they told me I couldn't have. I always believed reputation was something built in whispers and shattered in headlines. The truth, though? It's reclaimed in actions, loud, deliberate ones that don't ask for space, they take it. And that's exactly what I intended to do. The corporate world had seen me vanish from Sterling and Chase's roster like a footnote erased in red ink, like I'd never been there at all. No press release, no explanation. Just, gone. But if Trevor thought I'd quietly fade into some unemployed corner of LinkedIn, he didn't know who I really was. The moment Jacqueline confirmed Sterling and Chase was under quiet investigation, I got to work reclaiming my own narrative. First, I updated my website, new logo, new brand colors, new tagline, Maya Ellison, strategic creative for disruptive brands. I didn't mention Sterling and Chase directly. I didn't need to. People in our world understood the subtleties. What I did do was post a long-form article on Medium, titled, "The Creative Behind the Curtain, What Happens When Silence is No Longer an Option." It was sharp. Professional. Clean. I didn't name names, but the timeline was specific enough. I told the truth about how hard women, especially women of color, had to work for recognition in high-stakes marketing, only to be thrown under the bus when male leadership needed a scapegoat. It was raw but not messy. Furious but focused. And it ended with a line that felt like the thesis of my entire comeback: "You can take credit for my work, but you don't get to take my legacy." It exploded. Comments. DMs, reshares. My inbox filled with former colleagues, recruiters, even journalists. A few CMO contacts I'd pitched to over the years sent messages like, "We always knew who the real engine behind those campaigns was." One VP at an Atlanta firm asked if I was available for consulting work. Another offered me a seat on a panel about women in corporate crisis leadership. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't chasing people, they were chasing me. It wasn't just about the article. It was about timing. People love a redemption arc, especially when it comes with receipts. And I had them. Meanwhile, the storm inside Sterling and Chase was growing. Darren kept me updated on Signal. "He's unraveling," he messaged one afternoon. "Tried to throw Layla under the bus in a meeting yesterday, but she shut him down hard. She's not playing defense anymore." A day later, whispers about his removal are getting louder. HR asked 3 team leads for written feedback on leadership integrity. That's never good. I didn't take joy in his panic. Okay, maybe a sliver. But more than anything, I felt this sense of tightening alignment. Like for the first time, the world was tilting in the right direction. I kept building. I launched my own microagency, Ellison and Company, with a sleek one-page site and a waiting list for new clients. I took on one early client, a tech startup based in Austin, and helped them double their pre-seed subscriber base with a bold, ethically sound ad campaign. I even got invited to speak at a TEDx event in Ann Arbor titled "Invisible Until Blamed: The Cost of Silent Success." I wrote the speech in 2 days. Delivered it in 5-inch heels with my spine straight, my voice unwavering. People cried. People clapped. And more importantly, people remembered. And then, a full month after my article dropped, the first domino inside Sterling and Chase finally fell. I got the call from Darren on a Tuesday morning. He didn't even say hello. "It's happening." "What is?" "Langston. Effective immediately. Suspension pending review." I froze. "Are you serious?" He walked out of the building like someone kicked the soul out of him. "PR hasn't gone public yet, but the partners have already started separating him from any client accounts. Jacqueline's inquiry must have uncovered everything. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with vindication. Good, I whispered. Oh, and get this, Darren added. Jacqueline personally requested a meeting with the leadership team next week. Rumor is, she's pitching someone new to lead the Voltaire account. The implication hit me like a bolt of electricity. Maya, he said carefully, they're considering bringing you back, as lead. Not under him. Above him. Same client. Your strategy. Your team. I laughed, this wild, stunned, borderline euphoric laugh that burst from deep inside me. It wasn't just poetic justice. It was surgical revenge, the kind that rewrites not just the ending, but the origin story itself. But here's the thing. I didn't know if I wanted to go back. It would have been easy to say yes. To return to that building and reclaim my old desk, hold meetings in the same conference room where Trevor once slammed a report in my face. But part of me had already outgrown that space. I was building something new, something mine. I didn't want to crawl back. I wanted to choose what came next. So I did something that surprised even me. I asked for a meeting. Not with HR. Not with Sterling and Chase. With Jacqueline. We met in person, this time at the Detroit Foundation Hotel, in a private lounge where executives usually signed contracts or ended affairs. She was already seated when I arrived, again in cream, again flawless. She stood when I entered and smiled in a way that felt proud. Like she saw not just a woman fighting back, but one who won. I heard about the invitation, she said smoothly. I did too, I replied, setting my bag down. That's why I wanted to speak to you directly. Before I make a decision. Jacqueline nodded approvingly. Tell me what you want, Maya. And that was the question, wasn't it? I didn't just want revenge. I wanted respect. I wanted recognition. I wanted freedom. I want a seat at the table. Not as a pawn. Not as a second. As a decision maker, I said. I don't want to go back to where I was. I want to lead. And I want to do it without permission. Jacqueline considered this. Then she reached into her bag and slid a slim folder across the table. Inside, an offer. Not from Sterling and Chase. From her own firm. She was opening a new division, strategy-forward creative branding focused on ethical disruption. And she wanted me to lead it. Autonomy. Power. Clients I respected. Terms I dictated. I stared at the papers, then looked back at her. Is this your way of saying thank you? No, she replied coolly. This is my way of making sure women like us don't have to keep starting over every time a man gets scared of our brilliance. I accepted. Because I wasn't going back to Sterling and Chase. I was rising above it. And when the press release hit, Jacqueline Vaughn announces Maya Ellison to lead bold new strategic division, I didn't need to write a single follow-up blog post. The industry read between the lines. Everyone knew exactly what had happened. And everyone knew exactly who came out on top. Trevor Langston didn't just lose a job. He lost his entire mask. And I found my voice again. There's something sobering about standing at the top of the mountain you once thought you'd die climbing. It's not the view. It's the silence, the calm after the chaos. After everything I went through, being fired, blamed, underestimated, I wasn't just back. I was running the show. The day I stepped into my new office on the 19th floor of Vaughn and Hall's Detroit headquarters, I didn't feel nervous. I felt exactly right. The title on the door said, Executive Creative Director, Disruption Strategy Division, and underneath it, Maya Ellison. No subtext. No caveats. Just me. The same woman Trevor tried to erase. The same woman now leading a multi-million-dollar launch for Voltaire, and 3 other massive clients who jumped ship from Sterling and Chase the moment my name hit the press. Within weeks, I assembled a dream team, some I recruited from past agencies, others I plucked straight from Sterling and Chase. Layla joined me without hesitation. Darren too. So did a brilliant young art director named Cassie, who told me in our first one-on-one that she'd followed my career since grad school and never thought she'd work under someone who actually gets it. That meant more than she knew. We didn't just work, we redefined. Our campaigns didn't sell ideas. They moved culture. We tore down tired trends and rebuilt them with integrity. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just surviving in this industry. I was shaping it. And then, of course, Trevor tried to come for me. I should have expected it. People like Trevor don't go quietly. They don't reflect, apologize, or learn. They retaliate. With petty vengeance masked as corporate maneuvering. His first move came subtly, an anonymous blog post on a third-rate industry gossip site, full of vague accusations about toxic female leadership and manipulative takeovers. The language was textbook, dog whistles for the kind of men who confuse being held accountable with being victimized. The post didn't name me outright, but it didn't have to. The details were too specific, the tone too familiar. He framed himself as the real victim. Said I'd lured allies into betraying him, manipulated Jacqueline, and destroyed his career out of jealousy. It was pathetic. But also dangerous. Because in our world, even lies, especially emotional ones, can stick. For a moment, I hesitated. Should I respond? Defend myself? But then, like clockwork, the next twist came, and this one wasn't anonymous. A formal complaint. Filed through a Shell LLC. Citing contract interference, defamation, and unethical professional sabotage. It was his version of a Hail Mary, a lawsuit designed not to win, but to rattle me. To tie me up in court. To distract. To cost time, money, peace. I read the complaint in my office, alone, and for the first time in months, I felt something old crawl back into my chest. That tightness. That doubt. That sneaky voice whispering, what if this works? But then I remembered something I told myself when I was at my lowest, you only lose if you play small for their comfort. So I didn't play small. I didn't go quiet. I didn't flinch. I went louder. I scheduled an emergency meeting with Jacqueline and our legal counsel. I laid out everything, his past threats, the falsified data, the internal cover-up that led to my firing. Darren provided a signed affidavit. Layla backed it up. And most importantly, I handed them one final file, the original draft of the Voltaire presentation, metadata included, proving it was mine. My timestamp. My slides. My strategy. The same deck that Trevor presented as his own weeks before I was let go. That file? It became the nail in the coffin. Within 3 days, Vaughn and Hall's legal team countersued for defamation and malicious interference. We didn't just push back, we hit harder. The press caught wind. This time, I didn't hold back. I gave an exclusive interview to Adweek, where I spoke candidly, but professionally, about the cost of corporate betrayal and how I reclaimed not just my career, but my confidence. The article ran under the headline, "She was fired to protect a lie. Now she's leading the industry forward." It went viral. Recruiters reached out with 7-figure offers. Harvard Business School emailed me to guest lecture. Voltaire doubled our retainer and publicly stated that Maya Ellison was the reason they stayed. And Trevor? His name stopped appearing on pitch decks. Rumors swirled about him leaving the industry entirely. Some said he moved to a consulting firm in Des Moines. Others claimed he was ghostwriting blog posts for tech startups under a pseudonym. Wherever he went, it didn't matter. He'd spent years trying to build a career off the backs of women like me. And now, he'd become the cautionary tale at every HR seminar on what not to do as a manager. But here's the part one never expected, I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd gotten something better, power with purpose. I'd built a team that actually cared. I'd created campaigns that mattered. And more importantly, I'd given every ambitious, overlooked woman in our industry a blueprint: speak up. Keep receipts. Play the long game. Burn the damn bridge if it was never meant to carry your weight in the first place. My final power move wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was choosing to keep going. To rise without looking back. To lead with fire in my chest and grace on my face. And to know that the next time a woman sits in front of a man like Trevor and hears the words, "You're not a good fit anymore," she'll remember me, and know exactly what to do. I wasn't just Maya Ellison, former victim of sabotage. I was Maya Ellison, industry architect. The power they tried to bury? It bloomed. And it burned down every lie in its path. It's been 1 year. 12 months since I walked back into this industry with ash on my heels and purpose in my chest. 1 year since the headlines changed from scandal to strategy, from fired executive to visionary disruptor. Time has a strange way of diluting pain but sharpening legacy. And mine, I've learned, was never supposed to be just about surviving Trevor. It was about building what came after him. Today, I'm not just leading campaigns. I'm mentoring revolutions. When I look around our open concept floor at the Ellison Group, yes, I finally put my name on the damn door, I see something that didn't exist when I started in this field. I see women, queer creatives, neurodivergent strategists, trans designers, BIPOC data architects, each one holding positions of real influence, not just token titles. We're not a diversity stat. We are the standard now. And we're thriving. We run global campaigns. We partner with brands that value truth, impact, and story over ego and showmanship. We've turned away more toxic clients in 1 year than some firms gain in a decade. And you know what? We're still booked 6 months out. Every Thursday, I lead a closed-door mentorship circle called Fireproof. It started as a small support group, just me and 5 junior creatives trying to make sense of office politics, burnout, and being underestimated. Now? We've got chapters in 6 cities. Dozens of women and non-binary professionals Zoom in every week from New York, Atlanta, Austin, and Chicago. We talk strategy, self-worth, salary negotiation, and what to do when someone Trevorish tries to shrink your light. I never intended to become a face of anything. But life handed me a spotlight when it tried to bury me in darkness. So I made a promise: if I get out of this, I'm bringing others with me. That's exactly what I've done. Jacqueline and I still talk. She's now VP of Global Innovation at Vaughan and Hall, and we've partnered on 3 different campaigns. Last week, she called me after reading an article in Forbes titled, "How Maya Ellison Quietly Reshaped the Industry After Public Betrayal." She said, "I hope you realize, Maya, you're not just writing your story anymore, you're rewriting the rules." That one stuck with me. Because she's right. The rules used to be, don't speak up. Be grateful. Wait your turn. Smile through sabotage. Now? The rules are, document everything. Don't shrink. Build your exit and your empire. Help others climb. The old industry feared whistleblowers. The new one fears me, but in the best way. Because I didn't burn bridges out of bitterness. I built blueprints from the embers. A few months ago, I got an email from a young woman in Portland. Her manager tried to take credit for her research, then threatened to fire her when she pushed back. She told me she read my story in Adweek, printed it out, and taped it to her bathroom mirror. She said, "I didn't think I had a voice until I saw you use yours." That hit harder than any award. And speaking of awards, yes, we've won them. Clio. Webby. Can shortlist. But none of those trophies matter as much as knowing I earned my place. Without compromise. Without silence. Without sacrificing who I am to fit someone else's idea of professionalism. I walk into every room now with shoulders squared, voice steady, and eyes forward, not because I'm fearless, but because I remember the fear, and I chose not to stay there. And Trevor? Gone. A whisper in meetings. A ghost in Google search. Someone told me he tried to pitch a comeback podcast about leadership and resilience. I almost laughed. But I didn't. Because I've learned, revenge isn't about watching someone else fall. It's about rising anyway. It's about sitting at the head of the table they swore you'd never reach. And then pulling out more chairs. That's the legacy I want. Not to be remembered for what happened to me, but for what I did with it. For the fire I carried. For the voices I amplified. For the world I helped change, one bold, unflinching story at a time. And if you're reading this, if you're someone they tried to silence, someone standing at the edge of your own professional cliff, wondering if your voice is too much or your ambition too threatening, let me say this clearly: you're not too much. They're too small. And if they push you out, don't just walk away. Build something they could never imagine. Because the power they tried to bury in me, I turned it into a movement.